Van Swalten, poet and author of Alarm Clock Dawn. Please forgive any of my coughs or sniffles during this presentation. I caught a really bad cold on the way over. So how do you guys like Amsterdam? What a beautiful city. You know, right off the bat, I noticed things are a lot different here than they are in America, and that's definitely not a bad thing. I'm starting to pick up a little of the Dutch language. I walked into a coffee shop yesterday to get my morning brew, and I'm pretty sure the word coffee in Dutch means marijuana. The stuff was everywhere. I think we all need a little escape from reality after the presidential election back home in America. In all seriousness, people ask me if Steemit and cryptocurrency are real. A lot of folks just don't understand the concept of it yet. I think this is why we all so desperately need to tell our stories. Let me share mine with you. Just a few months ago, I was an indie author working a corporate day job, sitting in a cubicle dreaming of writing full-time and traveling the world. I steadily pursued this dream for over 22 years of my adult life without much luck. After just 4 months of writing on Steemit, I'm sharing the same stage with Neil Strauss and many other talented people here in Amsterdam. It doesn't get any more real than that. I'd say my dream is coming true. Before I get started with my reading today, I'd like to thank Ned, Roland, Cass, and all of the many Steamfest organizers in Wales for their hard work and tremendous support. You've all done such a wonderful job with this event. Can we get a round of applause for them, please? I've been posting my novel on Steemit in episodes for the past 3 months, and the plan today was to read the final episode. But it was brought to my attention that many in the audience might be new to the book. So instead, I'm reading episode 1. If you like what you hear today and would like to read more, episodes 2 through 60 are already posted on Steemit. This novel, Alarm Clock Dawn, took me 8 years to produce from concept to completion. The story was locked inside my head until I was able to find the key. That key was to learn the mechanics of how to write a novel. The good news for you other writers is it gets much easier after you produce your first work of long fiction. Writing your first novel is like boot camp and forges neural pathways that make future books far less difficult. I'm always so excited to introduce new readers to the cast of characters in this fictional world, which I created. But it sadly now isn't too far from our own. Without further ado, here it is, the first episode of my firstborn novel, Alarm Clock Dawn. Prologue. Desire, draw us deeper to the keeper of our hearts. We seek but a glimpse of timeless twilight in this long day's night. The peace that we seek begins within and ripples forth in silent waves, bathing each soul with light. The powers that be wish us to continue our slothful slumber, but our numbers are too great for our hunger to be quelled. Put your ear to the tracks and hear the low rumble of our humble awakenings. Take this, your first gasp of pure truth. Utter your first cry, then a long cleansing sigh, as we say goodbye to the darkness of this world. Chapter 1. As his limousine rolled to a stop at the curb, Johann Pfizer glanced up from his phone long enough to notice the protesters congregating near the convention center's back entrance. He sighed and pressed the black button on the center console, lowering the glass that separated him from the driver. "Driver, are you sure this is the only way in?" "I'm very sorry, sir, but this is our best option. There are even more protesters at the other entrances." "Damn it, these imbeciles are relentless," Johann mumbled to himself. Bodyguards the size of giants clambered out of their vehicles, smoothing black suits and adjusting earpieces. Johann looked over his shoulder to make sure the second security vehicle was in place behind him. The bodyguards fell into formation, flanking the front and the back doors of the limo. Johann glanced up at the rearview mirror, waiting for the signal from the driver that all was clear. "Director, security is ready when you are." Johann turned back to the crowd of protesters for a personal security survey. A mock headstone bobbing above them read, "Here lies the middle class, killed by wicked corporate greed." Johann shook his head in disapproval, and his eyes diverted to the reflection in the window. He put on his trademark smile and gave the bulletproof window 2 short raps with his knuckles. Just as soon as the limo door opened, the sound of the protesters erupted into a furious rhythmic chant. "Equal rights, down with wealthy parasites. Equal rights, down with wealthy parasites." The army of security guards swarmed around Johann, dwarfing him as they pushed their way through the crowd to the convention center's rear entrance. At the door, the security team fanned out, and Johann's team of assistants took their places. "Your latte and lozenge, sir." Johann's assistants knew to always have these 2 things readily available before any speaking engagement, or there would be hell to pay. As he continued towards the stage, Johann took 1 long sip of coffee before handing it off and unwrapped the lozenge and placed it in the middle of his tongue. "We start on your cue, Director," Patrick said. Patrick was one of Johann's newest assistants and donned an ill-fitting suit whose color clashed with his thick, unruly red hair. Johann possessed a nearly photographic memory when it came to faces and names. As he watched the recent college graduate dab at a sweaty brow with a handkerchief, Johann realized that Patrick reminded him of himself in his awkward younger years. 20 years ago, speaking in front of a live audience of 15,000 and a broadcast audience of millions would have shaken him to the core. In a way, he missed the adrenaline rush that came with the nervousness. He had found everything gets easier with time and practice, and the old rush of insecurity had been replaced by a void of sameness. Today his speech was given completely off the cuff, and he didn't even have a hint of butterflies. Johann remembered the naive and idealistic man he had been when he gained control of the company his father built from just a dream. Even back then, he was convinced he would change the world, and he was far too young to realize the world would craft him in ways he could never imagine. His father, Michael Pfizer, created Zentech with a $250 loan pulled together from his college buddies. And the company had grown far beyond what would ever could have been envisioned. By the time Johann took the helm 30 years later, Zentech had become the worldwide leader for technology, consistently a decade ahead of any of its competitors, if you could even call them competitors. Johann gave Patrick a quick wink as the heavy black curtains parted to roaring applause. The director strutted to the podium, planted 2 massive hands on either side, and stared into the crowd, offering his trademark smile as he waited for the crowd to quiet. "I know what you're here for, and I've kept you waiting long enough. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends in the media from all over the world who are broadcasting this event live so we can share Zentech's latest wonder with millions. The crowd's cheering elated to a deafening decibel as Johan began thinking of the massive amounts of money he and his shareholders would make in the next few days on the tidal wave of hype. Johan reached into the breast pocket of his gray pinstripe suit, pulled out a thin black rectangular device, and held it up for all to see. The room hushed. He stepped a few feet to the left, gently set the device onto the hardwood floor, and returned to the podium. Johan had the entire audience's full attention. I give you Holo, the future of entertainment and communication. He pressed a button on the small remote control, and his mirror image appeared directly beside the podium. This image was so lifelike, it could not be distinguished from the real Johan. The crowd was completely quiet, except for a few gasps. And even though the glaring lights were bright, he could make out the looks of the astonishment on their faces. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and then the room went black. A single flashlight beam shined from behind the curtains, and Patrick's shaking voice was heard over the chatter of the crowd. We've had a power outage. Please remain calm. After a few seconds, the spotlight came back on. The bright lights revealed Johan behind the podium smiling. Well, shall we try this again? The crowd cheered. Meet the Holo, an extremely powerful holographic projection device with resolution so fine and crisp, your eyes can't discern it from reality. Johan's holographic twin began juggling and then threw burning torches into the audience as people jumped up in the back of the auditorium and ran towards the stage for a closer look. And that is the end of episode 1. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for this introduction. Any questions for Mr. Van Swalten?
Yes.
Hi. Is it working? Oh, yes.
Yep.
How did you end up on Steemit? How did you find Steemit? And did you have any experience with cryptocurrencies before finding Steemit? And how has this transition been going on for you? You want to catch it?
Yeah, actually, I was part of a group that James Altucher started called Choose Yourself on Facebook. And one of the people who are also part of that group, her name is, well, she's Stella Bell on Steemit. She introduced me to the platform, and I had absolutely no idea what cryptocurrency was. And I think for me, the best way to learn about it was to actually go through the process of earning it and trading it into US dollars. It was like a crash course. I still have a lot to learn, though.
Yeah, keep learning.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Okay.